Hey everyone, so Mr. O'Brien here. I figured I'd go ahead and make a quick little video just breaking down the geologic timescale once again for just some basic details, just in case you missed anything or just need a little refresher. So here we have the Geological Society of America's geologic timescale. This is their version 6.0, and we basically break down it into a few major chunks, and surprisingly it's not actually what's listed here at the top. All three of these are sort of lumped together in one larger unit, which we'll go over in just a moment, and then this one is actually broken down into three. So if we look at the way that this thing is designed, technically the way that this should be done, even though they like to fit it onto a singular paper like this, just so it's more accessible, is what I've done is I've cut this out and I've broken it down into chunks, and I've taped them together based on the dates. So the year itself, knowing that at the very beginning was the creation of the formation of Earth, and that's going to carry on through time, and basically all this is a timeline. So this whole setup here is a timeline. It's just they took it and put it into little sections, into chopped it up into quarters, and then put it all onto an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. So when I cut those and put those back together, now we end up with the actual timeline, right? And we can run through each of these different sections as time moves on, and continues and continues and continues all the way until we get to our modern day, right? Which would be this point right here at year zero, or well, I guess, year zero is obviously a little bit further back, but 2024, 2025. So here, basically we're going from the very early, the formation of Earth. We go through larger units first. So our larger units, when we break down our timeline, this is sort of how we do it, right? So here we have our timeline, and we have Earth's formation at the beginning, and we have the present day at the other end. So we break our timeline up into the largest chunks. The largest chunks are known as eons, okay? So our eons, there are four major eons that throughout our geologic history. So we have our first eon here, our second eon, our third eon, and our fourth eon, which we are in currently. And we just kind of continue on through. And then just to make it a little bit easier for scientists and help to break down these very, very large chunks, which can literally be billions of years in length, we can break it down into smaller chunks. So we take each of those eons and we can break them down into multiple eras. On average, each of these eons are split roughly into about 3 or 4 eras. So just depending on how it is. Then we can take each of those eras, right? So if we were to take this eon and we can break it down into a couple of smaller manageable chunks, and just say, okay, well, this is the first era, this is the second era, and there's the third era. Now what we need to do is we can take one of these, if we needed to add in some more detail, and we can actually break that up into smaller units, right? And then we can take one of those units and even break it down into much smaller units. And surprisingly enough, we can even go smaller than that and break each one of those little gaps up into a smaller set of units as well. So the way that this runs down is we start with our eons as our largest units of time. And generally, again, they last around in the billions of years, except for the most recent one, which is still running at only about 500,000 years or so. Or sorry, 500 million years. Sorry. Our eras are a little bit shorter. They're going to be running probably on average in the hundreds of millions of years. Then we get to our periods. These are usually going to be running in the tens of millions of years, or millions in some cases. Our epochs are going to be broken down into sometimes millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years. And then our ages, which are going to be even smaller than that, in some cases only thousands of years. So we can get much more detailed depending on what we're focusing on. Now, the way that we're going to be breaking down the geologic timescale when it comes to the project is going to be looking at some of the larger chunks. So you're going to have your three main Precambrian time eons. So your Hadean eon down here, your Archean eon, and your Proterozoic eon. So those are three of the first eons. Now, we're not going to worry about any of those other units, right? So these other ones are just going to be off limits. We're not even going to worry about those. We're just looking at the eons for the first three. There's a lot going on. It's a long period of time, right? We're running nearly 4 billion years of history just in this red column. So we're going to sort of clump it together and just look at them sort of individually as their own eon. And we're not going to break it down into eras or periods. However, into more recent time, the last 500 million years, this is what we're going to be focusing on. Now, again, we're not going to get super detailed, so we're going to ignore the ages in each of these columns. So the ages don't matter. And for the epochs, we won't worry about it for the Paleozoic or the Mesozoic, but we will actually worry about it for the Cenozoic because this is the most recent chunk of time. So we're going to break this down into some smaller units, for this much more sort of closer time period and where we are right now, actually. So the Paleozoic, we're just going to look at our periods. This is part of the last eon called the Phanerozoic eon, and the era is our Paleozoic. So that's our Paleozoic era. And then we're going to break the Paleozoic era down into these sort of chunks right here. So the Cambrian, Ordovician, the Silurian, Devonian. We're breaking the Carboniferous up into the two American chunks, which are the Mississippian and Pennsylvanian, and the Permian. And then our Mesozoic, as we continue to move forward, after our 251.9 million year mark, we move into the Mesozoic, a new era. So the Mesozoic era is broken down into three periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. And we're going to look at those ones individually. By the time 66 million years rolls around, we draw a line that ends the Mesozoic era, and we now move into the beginning of the Cenozoic era, which begins at 66 million years ago. So our Cenozoic era can be broken down into periods, and those periods are going to be, now they do have this marked as the Tertiary. Again, that's another British unit and is no longer used in the US. We actually break it down into two smaller chunks called the Paleogene and the Neogene. So those are the ones that we're going to look at. And then we also have the Quaternary. Then we can take each of those sections and break them down into the epochs. And that's what we're going to be looking at here. So we're going to be looking at the Paleocene epoch, the Eocene epoch, the Oligocene epoch, the Miocene epoch, the Pliocene epoch, the Pleistocene epoch, and finally the Holocene epoch, which is what we live in currently. So just as a kind of general order of things, we currently, us humans on present day, live in the Phanerozoic eon, which includes all of this. So we live in the Phanerozoic eon, the Cenozoic era, in the Quaternary period, and the Holocene epoch. And then we can get a little bit more detailed if we want to and kind of get into the ages, but they didn't break it down here because it gets too small. So we're not even going to worry about that. But when you're following along with these, the most important thing that you need to pay attention to are the dates. And it has it listed under what's called picks. And those are very specific dates that occur between each of the different ages, different epochs, different periods, etc. So you look at that right column of dates, and that's going to tell you the exact time frame for that specific period or epoch or whatever you're looking at. So in this case, if we look at the Cretaceous period, we can see that it ends at 66 million years ago, but it actually started about 145 million years ago. And again, MA stands for millions of years ago. So 66 to 145, we can then work out that time difference and that how long that period lasted. And then we can scale that to match whatever our stretch is in the hallway. And I have those calculations shared with you in the directions for the project. But that's a quick rundown, again, of the geologic timescale. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense now. Again, if you think about it this way, to where if you were to sort of cut this apart and tape it together and make one big time frame or time scale, this is exactly what it would look like, right, in this order. So we have our Precambrian early on, right, which again takes up nearly 90% of the entire Earth's history. And then we break it down into these other sections here into some smaller units. The last 10% of Earth's history past the Precambrian. We get into our Paleozoic section, our era, our Mesozoic era, and then finally our Cenozoic era, all the way up to present day. All right, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, but hopefully that's enough to get you guys rolling with understanding this. Make sure you read through the directions very carefully. I tried to provide you as much details as possible. I'm not trying to make this a super difficult project, but there is some work required, obviously. So, all right, have a great time, and I will see you soon. Bye.